In this video, I would like to talk about why, for most of you, IISER won't actually be a good option. Now, the information in this video is going to be based on my personal experience and the experience of my friends that we had at IISER. So, take it with a pinch of salt because everybody's experience is subjective. Now, beginning with the first point, should I take IISER or should I go for medical or say engineering in IITs or NITs? To be honest, for someone like me who gave IISER in 2019, this really doesn't make any sense because the crowd at IISERs and IITs or the medical colleges are totally different. The courses are totally different. It's like an apples to oranges comparison. It's just not possible. However, I can totally understand where this question is coming from, given the recent coaching hype. Now, the thing is, the crowd at IISER and the course structure and everything at IISER is actually designed for people who are actually genuinely interested in research. And research, and succeeding in research specifically, is very, very tough. Like, it requires a lot of dedication. And I've seen people who joined IISER just because they didn't get anything else, and then they left after 1 year or one semester even. So the crowd at IISER is very different. It's very competitive. So most people who think of IISER as an alternative should keep in mind that they might just not survive there. It's really competitive, and it's really hard to survive and succeed there. So unlike medical or engineering, there are no fixed paths in research. It's actually a very non-linear and chaotic process to succeed. So you are not guaranteed a position even after completing 5 years of BSMS. So in case if you are searching for stability, don't come to IISER. Now this nicely brings me on to the second point, that is financial and in general stability of your life. Now, if you study in IISER, there is no guaranteed way that you will get a position abroad or a position in India. Actually, it depends on a lot of factors. It depends on your CGPA, it depends on your research experience, it depends on the overlap of the research experience that you have and the lab you're applying in. It also depends on how good of records you have, and it also depends on how diverse of an experience you have. It can even depend on things like extracurricular activities and so on and so forth. So there are like 1,000 variables. So you aren't actually guaranteed, even after doing, say, like having 9 CGPA and stellar extracurriculars, any position abroad. So it's really difficult and a very chaotic process to get a position abroad. That's what I'm trying to say. So there is no stability. Also, once you get into a PhD position, it's a limited position, and after that you do a postdoc, you have to relocate, you have to move around countries and so on, and this can be stressful in the long run. Like in 10-12 years, this can be very stressful. Even if you decide to get a job in the industry, it can still be quite stressful because you might have to relocate, you might have to put money off your own in the first few months and so on. Especially if you come from a middle class background, this can be quite tricky. So for example, when I was going to Israel for the first time around, for the beginning I had to pay for my visa fees and the health insurance on my own, which can be a large cost up front, and this can be a challenge for a lot of people, especially if you're coming from a challenged financial background. So yeah, this is something that you should really consider before joining IISER. Now this brings me on to the third point, which is basically graduating from IISER and moving abroad and the problems associated with it. Now, I do realize that this is actually a dream for most of you watching this video, but let me break it to you that this isn't all nice out here. There are tons of problems about living abroad, especially as an Indian. To begin with, there's racism, which, to be honest, is an unfortunate truth, and you will only realize this once you come to Europe or US. Second is the load of family responsibility for you just becomes higher. Now say you are living abroad and suddenly someone in your family falls ill. What do? You can't just fly away straight away to your home. So this mental load always remains at the back of your head. Also, since you live in different time zones, communication with your family can become quite difficult, and this can be really isolating. And let's talk about isolation. This is something that I see a lot among my fellow batchmates, that once they move abroad, they become isolated and mentally depressed. And this, I think, is a general experience for most of the expats living in the West. And this can actually take a toll on your mental health. So yeah, I mean, right now these things to you might be very vague and so on, but believe me, once you come to my stage, you'll realize these are really, really important. And then there is the cost of living crisis in most Western countries, be it US, Australia, Canada, or the EU. So some time ago I was in Netherlands, and the Netherlands has the worst housing crisis ever. Like, I know my friends are struggling to get an apartment there. They are living in student dorms and so on and so forth. So it's very difficult. So it isn't all sunshine in Western countries. Now this brings me on to the next point, which is limited to no scope for IISER graduates in India. Now imagine you have some family issues or something and you can't go abroad. So you decide to stay in India. First of all, the stipend that there is for PhD students in India is quite low. And now you decide to exit academia and switch to industry or go for an MBA or MTech. Now the scope and the competition there are quite terrible. So yeah, the overall scope for an IISER graduate in India are quite low to non-existent. So even if you decide to do your PhD and come back to India, the funding and industry scenarios are quite grim. So there is quite low chance that you will succeed. So for most IISER graduates, they are forced to stay in the West and take up a job there if they want to succeed, which is again an unfortunate reality. So in my personal opinion, these are the major factors why for most of you IISERs may not be the best option. However, it's your life, so feel free to do whatever you please. Thanks for watching.